Okay. This is the Book Club 1632 panel, which is being recorded. So we can put it on Facebook or YouTube, and people on Facebook can read it. So, has everyone here read 1632?
Yes, ma'am.
And just out of curiosity, how many years have y'all been 1632 fan? 5 years or less? 10 to 15?
20.
15 to 20?
When does it come out first?
More than 20?
What year did it come out first?
It's 25 years.
Okay.
Anyways.
I didn't find it until it came out in paper, so 21 years.
So 20 to 1, most of us have been reading this series for more than 20 years. So, I'm going through book club questions where I try to figure it out. I'm like, would you recommend this book? I'm like, I'm pretty sure if you flew to Dallas for a convention on 1632, you'd recommend the book and you enjoyed it. I feel confident. I'm a little concerned if you hated the book and you showed up for the convention.
Lost copies and donated to the library, you know?
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. So, who was your favorite character in the series? Bjorn tells me I'm not allowed to say Irene. Irene Flannery. I say Irene for everything. And who's your favorite? Who's your favorite? Irene. Can't say Irene. So everyone else, who's your favorite character?
Gretchen. She came from nothing, and she wound up a very confident, strong woman. She was confident and strong before, but she hadn't got the opportunity to show it.
Yes, I would agree. I think Gretchen's fabulous. Anyone have any of the characters that are not the big ones that...
Marla Linder.
Marla, yeah, Marla.
Yeah, Marla's a good character. That's a really good storyline. David wrote it really well. If I had to choose a favorite romance, that one's the, I think.
Yeah.
And I think that's a pretty safe one to say, like, across the board, everyone loves that romance. Yes?
Or if you want to talk about romances, Sharon and Roy or something special.
And Roy is such an excellent character.
Yeah. It is, yeah.
I mean, you have, like, life size, and then you have larger than life, and then you have whatever comes after that, and then you have Roy. I mean...
And the line where he tells Sharon, you can't go visit his mother's grave, is just heartbreaking and beautiful.
Yes, and I like what Eric said, that how he had decided that one was going to play out. He said, a lot of people are thinking I'm going to have Roy die gloriously in battle or a duel or something. He says, but I'm not. I'm going to have him die peacefully in bed at an advanced age, surrounded by wife, children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren.
Excellent.
Outstanding.
Brad, if you see that stops showing a picture on the thing, let me know. Okay. I think one of the things that we all can enjoy is the depth of the characters in this series, right? And you'll have someone who's a lead key character for one writer, and they're secondary or tertiary or just in passing for another one. But like, if you see, you can say, mention Gretchen in a story, right? And Gretchen is so well developed in every sense of the term that you can have Gretchen walk down the street and you have a guy just be like, kind of give her a glance, and you know what the guy's looking like, right? I mean, you know Gretchen, you know who she is. She's very self-confident. You know her character. And so it takes very little to convey a lot because there's such depth for so much of this.
So many of those characters are kind of iconic. Not necessarily in the way you might expect, but just like you said about Gretchen, somebody gets mentioned, Dr. Nichols gets mentioned, and we know exactly who you're in the room with. Whether he says a word or not.
Yeah, and some of them are, it goes back to, Eric, well, what do you think of the West Virginia Hillbillies as his choice for the lead characters and the motive force for change in the universe?
Well, if you've ever been through the Appalachians, my aunt lives in the Appalachians, in a small coal town called Colburn, where Virginia, Tennessee, and Kentucky all come together. And they're just all jacks of all trades. And
You can see what's happening with Helene came through a few months ago, and the
Yeah.
people who are going through, and we can't fix this road, and the hillbillies come through with their coal mining trucks, and 2 days later, there's a road. It's not a great road, it's not a permanent road, but it's a road.
they're gonna fix the problem. Now, you might not like the way they fixed the problem, but the problem will be fixed.
You're not gonna find a lot of people with advanced degrees in engineering, but you're gonna find people that know how to build a road here, and they're gonna do it.
There was a comment I heard one time growing up, and someone looked at a house in Appalachia and went, well, that's what happens when everyone for 3 generations has read every issue of Popular Mechanics. Did this series...
Yeah.
And they definitely have the whole series of Foxfire books in Grantville, in a few copies of them. And so you have experience in real life with Appalachia. I know people in Appalachia. And obviously we have readers from all over. Not everyone has met hillbillies for real, right? So did reading this series, the 1632 book, the first book and then the other ones coming after it, has that changed anyone's views of hillbillies?
As we said yesterday, myself and my partner have managed to travel the furthest for this convention. And we're from the UK. We don't know that many Americans. We know the stereotype.
Right.
To read the books and to watch the development of youngsters, David Bartley springs immediately to mind. He was a young man at the start of it, where he had a tough time. His mother's not as capable as she might be. His grandmother is strong.
You're very kind.
And he has grown up watching out for the safety and security of his mother and his family. And as he developed, reading through something like Barclay's Man, the development of him growing, making sure his mother was safe, making sure everything worked, and then on into his development into the army was absolutely fascinating. He could have grown up with the mental health issues that many young people have today. He didn't. He just looked at it, saw a situation, got on with it. And that to me is what I loved about him.
And you're saying the mental health issues. We've talked a little bit this weekend about it's 2025, and this was written in 2000. And over the past 25 years, things have changed, right? And it's not just the fact that there were cell phones in town, but you could count them on your hands, right? And smartphones didn't exist. But one of the other things that there is a crisis of opioid abuse in that part of the country. That's not opinion, that's not slander, that's simply a truth. And it's a very widely known truth. I don't know when that started or how much of
In
it.
2014, it started getting pretty bad.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it wasn't a significant thing in this time. And that is something I think we're going to have to look, as we're building some information for people to look at going forward so they know what was it like in 2000. And that may be something that I wouldn't have thought of off the top of my head that we'll need to bring up is that wasn't really a big factor then. So I appreciate your comment there. Anyone else have anything that?
Well, part of the cultural aspect, we tend to sometimes say this jack of all tradesness, if you want to put it that way. You're identifying it with Appalachia. But to a considerable extent, it works much more widely in rural America as a whole. Because when I was doing the grid to start with, if you've ever looked at the RTF version, a lot of the people have notes, little things. And many of those notes were when we were just starting to feed the information into the program. My younger brother, who was a farmer in Missouri, made notes for many of those people based on people he knew along the way. And as a newspaper once said of the county where I grew up, Boone County is a county of Kentuckians. And Kentucky was largely settled by people out of Appalachia. The culture went on west from there. So the types will be recognized by a wider, it's not that narrowly limited geographically.
Yeah. I think, I always joke that one of the biggest miscalculations in all of science fiction was when Eric Flint and Jim Bain thought 1632 was a standalone novel.
Oops. Good mistake to have.
Oops, exactly. So what do you think, does anyone else have any thoughts about the idea of 1632 as a standalone?
There's too much left open for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wide open. There's
Well-
too many strings left untied.
Well, and, you know, I mean, how many other standalone books got a second edition with corrections? You know?
There's that.
This is obviously a unique book. And I was talking with Gorg earlier about this, and he was like, well, there's actually other books that were written around the same time that are similar, and he started to talk about them. And no, this is a unique book because that other series does not have 176 and counting authors that have written in it. It doesn't have 14 million words. It doesn't have any of the things that make
Yeah,
this.
that's because Sterling didn't allow fan fiction.
And that's what I was going to ask. What do you think makes this universe so unique?
Eric,
Yeah.
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 just,
Him saying, come play in my sandbox.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Eric's ideologies and letting people play in his world is what has made this so big and so popular.
I mean,
It's on.
it wasn't just that you let people, it was that you.
Bjorn,
He encouraged.
can you shut the door, Bjorn? It's loud out there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Across the street from you.
Yes?
One of the things that strikes me about this is because it's inherent in the first book. We get through the solution of the immediate problem, but you're aware of the immensity of the possibilities for ramifications down the road, next week, next year, 5 years from now, rattling around. And that's part of what attracts me to it, is my background academically is history. And while there's other things that have been purported to be future histories, this is the only thing that even approaches the depth of an actual possible series of events.
I love the way Eric opened it because it's not something
You drop your card.
any individual person could have written because it has everyone's styles and thoughts, right? And like a real town would. So I think it's, yeah, Eric's willingness to open it up, and honestly, the willingness of so many people to volunteer their time or to work, in some cases to work, but for very little, to do a lot of supportive things, right? Like Virginia created the grid. And I don't think that she was paid a ton of money to create the grid, she just created the grid.
Yeah.
And that's a backbone piece, and without Virginia's grid, this wouldn't be the same thing,
Yeah.
right? The grid is a critical infrastructure for what we're doing. And we
Well,
have,
that came really from Eric's rant on the many halves of Grantville, that I thought, well, you know, I do have the background that will enable me to create Grantville as it would be realized, rather than with all of these
yeah,
Navy SEALs and
craziness.
Marine drill instructors. We can have one, but you can't have 93.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. And then we have someone who creates maps for the universe and does mapping. So we have all of these little niche areas and people that are willing to help to ensure we're all on the same page in more than one way. So I think that's pretty amazing that we have the people willing to step up and support in those ways.
Yeah, she was mentioned early last night, but I had the privilege of knowing Pam Pogo pretty well. I don't want to say pretty well.
Better than the rest of us.
Yeah, because we were part of a group that would meet maybe 4 times a year and have supper, all the Houston flies. And she only had the one article, but she was early the tech person to go to because she lived at the Bel Air Library, and all she did all day because she was retired was people would send her an email and say, when did knitting start to become really popular? And so she researched that and pile a 15-page little mini article that she'd fire off to whoever asked the question. And she was always bringing up stuff during the suppers, dinners that we had about, yeah, well, so-and-so asked me to look into this and that. So she was probably the first tech person before the tech forum even got started.
Someone asked, why are people writing in this instead of forming their own IP? And I thought on that for a while, and we have a community, right, that we're clearly a part of, which writing is very isolating and can be very isolating. I know a lot of writers are introverts, but you still need to be around human beings and interact. So there is a community that you're part of. But one of the other things is, particularly older people, right? When you retire, you have this lifetime of knowledge, and now it's not being used, and no one's asking you, and possibly they don't care. In my case, I love costume history. I have 2 sons and a husband. They don't care, right? So when you go on and you're part of this community, there's a place where that knowledge is valued, right? People aren't going to care about everything, but they care about a shocking variety of things and in amazing detail, right? And if anyone is listening to this and you are interested in writing, you do not have to go into shocking degrees of detail for things, but it is a place where a lot of knowledge is valued that may not have a use in everyday life. Does that make sense? So I think that's another aspect of this and why it's so special that people don't really think through, is that you can go on there and have your little weird thing, and your area that you're interested in, and you can write a story about it. And there can be a really good story and everyone will love it. And it's about a cyber-specific thing that no one in your real life cares about. And we're like, yay, cool, new story! And you have thousands of people reading your story, right? So I think that's another aspect of it that makes it special.
It helps you not just send a story on speculation or just out into the void to see if anybody catches it and cares. It helps to have the community on the bar particularly, and the folks in the 1632 and beyond community, they have picked up where Eric left off because they don't want to see anybody get left behind.
We're working very hard to make sure that's true, and we stay true to that vision of Eric, so thank you. And that goes back to Eric being Eric. And that's why if you look at the name, it's Eric Flint's 1632 and Beyond, and it's Eric Flint's Granville Gazette, and it's Eric Flint across all of it. So if you could go visit one location in the novel in 1632, where would it be? Or one scene? I'd like to see them blasting the heavy metal, like the rock music, before they had the battle. I would really like to see that.
One of my favorites, one of my favorite scenes is when the Scottish cavalry arrives and they read the sign out there that they put on. We don't know who these guys were, but if you're gonna, and Lennox says, "Don't look now, but there's deadly fairies coming through the woods in the camo," and then he gets to the school and says, "Deadly fairies indeed." You know that.
I liked it when Rebecca said, "Oh, sure, not fat." It was just so against what a lot of the stereotypes of the period are. Because Eric kept saying, "No, we are not in the Dark Ages anymore."
I love Melissa Maley. You know what I mentioned her, but if I can't choose Irene, I like Melissa Maley a lot, which I guess shows that I like the slightly curmudgeonly female characters. But she's more fun. She's more fun.
Eric and I dedicated one of our joint novels to, his choice was Priscilla Maley, who was his high school history teacher, and mine was Emma Edith Hartwig, who was my high school history teacher, because they were the people who brought both of us being interested in history. But Melissa Maley was based on Eric's high school history teacher.
That's fun. It's fun when you find out some of these characters who they're based on in real life. And we've visited Mannington a few times, and it's interesting to see some of the locations in real life. And we've been going through Google Maps and looking in more detail at the older ones. So when we go back to Mannington next time, I have a few more spots I need to check out to see what they look like in real life. The novel is 1632, but they're sent back in time to 1631. And the reason for that was Jim Bain felt like novels that ended in an even number sold better. And it was a standalone novel. So it ended in 1632. It was named 1632. Now, knowing that it's an entire universe now, and that you have to explain to everyone why they were sent back, the 1632 universe was sent back in time to 1631, not 1632. If you could, would you go back and change the name to 1631?
No.
Yes?
So, to my mind, from when they arrived in 1631 to Christmas, they weren't living there, they were surviving.
Yeah.
After that Christmas, that first Christmas, when they produced some chips,
Yes.
when Wallenstein came and was, Pappenheim was Father Christmas, that was when they started living it.
Yeah.
We were talking about Crystal and how she couldn't accept that she was going to be staying there, that was permanent. And I think for a lot of people, that sense of uncertainty, how, why, where in the world they were,
Yeah.
persisted for a long time, but Christmas made it this is real, and now we start living. So for me, you need 1631 almost as a prologue.
That makes sense. I can see that. That's a good explanation. I was just curious because, you know, we always have to go back and give the explanation, and this is why it was like that. So,
1632 is really kind of when they start not being constrained by all the things that they don't believe can't be undone, and they start trying to undo things.
yeah. We're not going to take no for an answer on these things. This is just how it has to be because humans. And we've got a constitution that says all these things, and we don't care that we don't have one. We do.
I'm part of it.
Yeah. How did 1632, reading it, how did this novel make you feel?
That it ended too quick.
It was far more optimistic than the majority. So much of the fiction that was coming out even then was very dystopian.
Yeah.
And it was a joy to read.
Yes. And that was one of the first times I talked to Eric, I was like, or one of the calls, I think, I was saying, this is such a positive story, and I love that this is, you know, a positive view of people, right? It's not the world changes and everyone goes feral.
It is, I mean, it is so positive, and it's such a contrast to, I mean, it's hard to say exactly when this started, but, you know, to me, West Virginia has been, I mean, it's been, for decades, it's been kind of this grinding poverty, kind of going nowhere. And here we get this, you know, this magic, whatever it is happens, and all of a sudden now we have a positive future. How do we get there from here? You know, it's one hell of a story. You know, you'd like to see that happen in real life, because I've been to West Virginia, and there's a lot of that grinding poverty is still there.
Well, you know, it's been 25 years, and buildings and things have changed in Granville because, like, there's right near Veronica's Preparatory Academy in downtown Mannington on Market Street. There's something that used to be Malone's, and it's a storefront thing. And I believe it's going to be getting torn down now because the roof has caved in. And that just happened in the last year. 25 years ago, even 5 years ago, I think, was around when it closed, it was still a functional store. And now that's gone. And there's another building a little further down Market Street, right before Main Street, that it's a brick building, and the end of it has collapsed in the last year. And those are just two of the changes that have happened on Market Street in 25 years. Yes, Bjorn?
But at the same time, we see a concerted effort in town to clean up
Yes.
abandoned buildings.
Yes.
They're being torn down, there are parks going in. Where the railroad tracks go through town in the novel, they pull the tracks out in Mannington. There's a street there. They've actually replaced the community pool within the last year. The forced inactivity during COVID led to, you know, no maintenance on it, and it was unsalvageable, so they fundraised a new one that opened this past summer. So I'm seeing a lot of positive developments in Mannington compared to what it looked like 10 years ago. And some of you guys were there 20 years ago.
And there's also, there's a large building where Market Street crosses a little bridge and it becomes Buffalo Street. And there's a building there that the first floor was a grocery store in the upstairs. There's 2 floors that, my understanding is, both floors, I believe, were an apartment for someone with a great deal of money. And it's fallen into disrepair. And there's a company that, or organization, someone has bought it and they're repairing it and bringing it back. So there are very definitely positive changes. But the challenge is, our year for what happened is 2000. So one thing we're doing is we're looking at, as far as I'm concerned, and Bjorn isn't pushing back on this at all, if it's on Google Maps, you need to use what you can see on Google Maps, and you need to use the oldest version available. So if the oldest version is 2013, we're looking at a 2013 picture, and a lot of the area, it's 2007, so we're looking at a picture from 2007. If that's what it looked like in 2007, that's where it's frozen in our world, right? So it's interesting because you can kind of look through those images and see changes over time. And some of them are, these buildings are derelict, we're removing them, and something better is going in their place. And we'll have something new and shiny and things that are getting repaired. So we want to see the positive, right? And Mannington is what this is based on, and Eric is what this is based on. So we are trying to do some things that, like, you'll see posts shared about things that are happening in Mannington to our Facebook page, because we would like our folks to understand and see some of what's going on in a positive way and be excited about Mannington. So, anyone else have any particular scenes they would like to see, or areas they would like to, or areas in the books they would like to see if they could? I'd love a field trip for us all to Germany, but, you know.
I've actually got to, I'd like to get to Prague to see where the Roths are improving things for the Jewish ghetto.
Yeah.
But I'd also quite like to go out into Russia with the Tsar.
Go to the Dachau.
Yeah.
And see what's going on with the expansion east.
Yeah, I really enjoyed those books, and it's a nice, clear subset that you can read.
Yeah.
Someone getting into it. Yes?
I'd like to see Melissa May giving Daryl McCarthy a real ear bending when they blew up the Tower of London. You know, sort of saying it's a historical monument, how dare you?
I know. Poor Melissa Bailey having to be part of that. Yes?
Yeah, I'd like to go to that 4th of July parade, because I think that's when the whole countryside around there finally especially that one line, "Hey, look, it's Becky."
Yeah.
So, and, you know, a Jewess being, you know, held up and praised. Hey, look.
Those are one of their questions. What do you think some of the scenes and characters that are really important for canon are? And you're right, that one is a good, the parade, and sort of why. The parade and a Jewess being a good thing. Yep.
It's actually in 1633, but Jesse radioing for takeoff, he says this is Bell 2 Tower. No, scratch that, this is Air Force One.
Yeah.
I kind of want to be a fly on the wall while he's putting that pink Formica on that airframe.
I have lots of allergies, so scratchy nose. And frequent face mask. Anything else, anyone?
Oh, well, there's so much. I mean, it's so, I mean, there's so many things happening, so many positive characters in the whole series. I mean, it's just, it's truly amazing how many strong characters. I mean, I think Eric, you know, only really considered like, 3 or 4 characters to be like core characters, but after that, there's so many strong characters that have come out of Granville. I mean, Judy Wendell, both of them.
Yes.
Sarah,
The
we
parents
talked
don't
about
get used as
Marla.
much, yeah.
What's that?
The parents don't get used as much as the kids in that one, the
What's
Wendell
that?
family.
That's
The
true,
Wendell
they-
family, the
they-
parents are a little,
Yeah, it was kind of interesting how they got they got restricted by the conflict of interest thing. But yeah, well, since they
well, and you bring that up, that's an interesting point, that's a very real cultural difference between the downtimers and the uptimers, where the uptimers are like, conflict of interest, and the downtimers are like, what, they're fighting over their interests?
Why aren't you making money off of this?
yeah right yeah you're supposed to that's why you
That's
get
not
to
a
be
conflict
there
of
so you
interest,
can make
that's
money
a job work.
and help your friends and your relatives. You're supposed to do that. Why would you not do that?
Yeah, it's a
they
feature,
don't-
not a
they
bug.
Get it. Sure, and even I don't know who wrote the series of artists and musicians that would come wandering through Grantville. I mean, I think most of that was David Carrico, was it not?
Robert Waters and Mariah Crawford do the artists.
So, Artemisia coming through, and it's this opportunity for the cultural survey of Europe of 1630, the 1630s. You're like, okay.
One of the things that I knew better, but I thought Mike was getting soft, too diplomatic, too accommodating. And in the book that has the cover that the artist painted of him with the little demons and stuff like that, he makes it very clear that that you can only push him so far, and then they'll see.
Yeah.
They'll see the violent side.
Yeah.
His response. I think it was a kind of question of the slavery.
Oh yeah, they don't have much give on slavery.
Yeah, and it was. He said, "Try me." Yeah, or something like that. Yeah, I thought he's got too diplomatic, but he's not.
Yeah. About as far as they'll give on slavery, I think, is you can buy a slave if you intend to free him. I mean, I think that's the furthest they go, and even then, it's kind of like, that's a personal opinion.
We're seeing some stuff in New
Eric said he
Amsterdam.
himself got frustrated, that he had boxed himself in by letting Mike become prime minister, because it is absolutely impossible to write an interesting story about a bureaucrat. I said, no, it isn't, and I wrote about bureaucrats. But from his perspective, he had constrained himself, and he deliberately had Mike lose the election so he could get him out of office and send him off to do something else.
And that's part of what, we keep coming back to what makes this an interesting series, and Eric saying, well, this is boring, I can't do this, I gotta change it, and someone else being like, well, why, let me show you.
Yeah.
Hold my beer.
The whole series, one of the fun things I did for getting all handouts ready, I went back and read through every episode of Snurkers on Baines Bar and observed how very protean and fluctuating the overall planned arc of the series became, as from one year to another, Eric thought, oh, I have a better idea. I'm going to drop what I told you I'd do last year and do something else.
Well, and other people come up with other ideas, and I mean, I know I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but I know there's things where someone wrote something and Eric went, that was kind of cool, and it altered plans.
Tom Stone.
Tom Stone?
Well, it was
Tom Stone is
certainly the case when
And Gribble
Ken
Flots.
brought up the Caribbean. That was a whole new.
And the fact that,
Well, the Stones, they weren't core characters at first, and then
They weren't even characters at first. They were Mercedes Lackey's story.
yeah. So nice of her to share.
and I love the idea, Gribble Flots, for anyone who doesn't know, started out, I don't remember all the details, but basically they started out as a joke. The character started as a joke on the bar, and they got to a point and they were like, all right, well, we're just writing a story. And so the
Now
source
he has
is-
2 books to himself?
And now he has 2 books to himself. He's a character other people use. He's fabulous. So, and we have about 5 minutes till they're likely to have us leave so the next group can come in. But one of the things, after 25 years, right? We've all been reading it 25 years. That means that we are greater than 25 years old. Right? And so one of the things any series needs to do is continue to grow and remain relevant is we need to draw in more readers. So do you have any thoughts on things we can do to draw in new readers, just in new readers in general, new writers, younger readers, writers, a different segment? If there's a way we can reach out to people, because we have with 14 million words, we've got romances, we've got political science things in it, we've got lots of historical detail. We've got more than just its alternate history. So, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was going to say, is one of the things I'm involved with, maybe to a certain extent, is we get involved in some film companies. I presume that some media company, either from Hollywood or a TV company, has approached Eric at some stage and or now his estate to sort of do some sort of film, television adaptation of it. I know I did speak to a guy about 3 years ago from a company in London, and I was saying it might be a good idea, have a listen to it on YouTube, the free sound thing, because from a costume point of view, you've got very little to worry about because you've got modern day stuff along with a period stuff, and there's enough costumiers companies out there to do it at a reasonable price. I mean, I think.
There is a desire from sort of everybody to have movie or TV at some point, and it just hasn't, all the pieces haven't gelled together to make that move forward.
I don't think it would be a good movie. I'd love to see a
TV series would be better.
TV series.
It would be, or like
It's too expansive to make one movie out of, you know?
Right,
And
right.
it's also too expansive for
Yeah.
one movie.
Yeah, it would have to be
It would
like a
turn out to be
2-hour,
like the Star Wars song.
yeah,
you know,
like a 2-hour
having
pilot to
movies
get
in
you
it.
into it.
I think if they did it like they did
Yeah.
last time, that would be outstanding.
What's that?
Yeah, yes.
So, yes, we would love to do that, but it hasn't
Well,
gelled yet. And
Somewhat lesser than that, some a YouTube channel.
we have a YouTube channel. We haven't done much with it. I'll go back a second. I'll let Richard talk in a minute and then I'll.
Well, it seems to me that one of the key things to bring in a younger generation is the opportunities, some of them exploited, many of them not, to see a story that people can put themselves into, like the Barbie Consortium and the young people evolving into adults and significant characters.
So basically younger characters, focus
Yeah,
on younger characters.
exactly.
more.
It gives it scope for people to read themselves into the story.
Okay, that makes sense. And
Yeah, we've written about the high school, but I know there's a middle school and at least one elementary school, but I don't know where they are or how many there are really.
you don't want me to start talking about where they are.
Okay.
I'll go into the geography of
Okay.
Bennington more than you really want to hear about right now. I'm happy to talk to you later. But
Okay.
Yeah, get some of those young kids that came in the Ring of Fire and get them involved. See what they're doing.
So, I am actually just a daughter of a fan, so I don't know really much about 1632 at all. But I would have been 6 in 2000, and now I'm 30. So, I would say that many of the people that would be looking into that were probably my age, maybe a little bit older, a little bit younger. Many of us, there are certain medias that I haven't heard in here that we are into now, like podcasts. That's a big thing for us. And many of the ways we absorb social media is through, well, it used to be Twitter, now it's X, or Blue Sky, what have you. Having things like that, or even a reach to, I don't know if any of y'all know about Discord. or what this word is, a lot of the instant messaging or message board type of conversations take place in these disparate spaces, more so in my generation and younger. I would also say that most likely if you're writing people that are younger, probably you won't get 100% right, and being okay with younger people saying like, hey, that was not the experience of the early 2000s, which I'm sure y'all are from what I've heard from my father about how Baines is. I think that might be something to look into as well.
Oh, and going back to the YouTube, there are some assets that were lost. The passwords were lost when Eric died, and admin access was cut off for some people who did have it, and so we don't really know what happened. There's a couple of old YouTube channels that we can't get to that we're working on getting access back and assets back from those. And they're old panel discussions on those. So they're probably not going to be the most exciting thing for you. But the thing is, what is interesting is there's some of the weird tech that Rick Boatwright did that I think is like for the geeks and that kind of thing. They're pretty interesting. We're working on a new YouTube channel, so these videos from this will be on our YouTube channel. And one of the things we just started talking about was podcasts, getting on a podcast. So I think that needs to be fairly high on our priority list, and what you're saying, it needs to be fairly high on our priority list, and we can do some of those other things. But for anyone watching this is probably watching it on YouTube. But
Somebody who's addicted to phone crack, I've noticed that you guys are not on TikTok at all.
we're not on TikTok, and there's not that many of us, so we have to be a little more targeted on what we're doing. We're on Facebook, which works fairly well for our current readers, but it won't work to reach someone who's 30 very effectively. So we will look at doing that and adding some more.
Because Book Talk is real big, but they tend to hammer the same books over. I mean, Bain has no imprint at all. I've never seen a Bain book mentioned.
Book Talk? Okay, and so I really enjoyed chatting with y'all about this. I don't want to make the next people late starting theirs. And thank you for sitting in and keep reading.
Thank you.